Exploring the unknown, from conspiracies to mysteries, you are entering the conspiracy sector.
Welcome everyone to this very special program. I am your host, Aubrey Batchelor. Sailing this amazing ship of knowledge with me is Chris Jacobs, and you are entering the conspiracy sector. We're in the festive time yet again, and Santa Claus is going to be coming down your chimney here shortly. And if you've been good, you're going to get presents. If you've been bad, you're going to get coal.
Hmm.
So,
We're Krampus.
yeah, Krampus not. Krampus will visit you and take you down to his lair. But it's that time of year again, and it's also around the time where we start talking about our New Year's predictions. And I know everybody that follows this show has ideas on what's going to take place in the future and what might happen. And every time this year, we always do a prediction show and go into what we think might take place. And we need to hear your guys' thoughts too. We want to know your opinions, what might happen coming up. And we're going to dive on into what we believe is going to take place. And let's try to combine all of our answers a year from now and see what takes place. The nice thing about this is it's in recording. And, with people commenting, we can see and go back and see how much was properly right. A year from now, it was a little bit of a experiment and exercise. But I know, Chris, we're talking pre-show. You and I synchronistically matched up yet again. But how you been doing?
Yeah, it's been up and down energy wise. It's been pretty rough. The energy kind of tidal forces are getting pretty rough around the solstice time frame. That's the 21st. Yeah, we're recording here on 12/10/24, and you can still feel it 11 days out from that. Yeah, we synchronistically picked both Nostradamus and Baba Vanga, I believe, for our profits. We both synchronistically did it. And I did this as of this morning. I hadn't looked up stuff yet, so I got on, and both of those popped up synchronistically.
And
And
that's the real reason I went with him too. Traditionally I was going to go with a couple of others, but I want to save those for a future show maybe because there's some interesting tidbits and that I could dive into when it comes to different people. Even things like remote viewing, that's even a minorly futuristic tactic sort of a. And you and I have done remote viewing exercises before. Where
mm,
that's kind of the strange thing is we both had the same assumptions. Ah, you know what? I'm going to change my mind. And since these guys are hot topics right now, let's talk about them.
exactly. And then that ended up syncing up. So that's usually spirit working there for some reason or other. One of that synced up. I thought that was actually quite interesting.
What
Uh,
I'll laugh even more is if we chose the same article to talk about.
I well, I chose mine on let's see, mine was, let's see, just one was on Google itself, one was not Wikipedia, but what I think these were just on Google themselves is what I'm seeing here. So yeah. Uh,
I guess we'll find out a little bit later.
I was looking up some stuff today on like some of his prophecies and all this other stuff. Yeah, there's some stuff on Wikipedia and things of that nature. Like you could go into like some of the earlier history. I can go into.
And well, see, that's the thing. And most people that listen to this show probably have most likely have heard of Nostradamus and maybe not Baba Vanga, but or Baba Vanga. But needless to say, Nostradamus has been talked about for millennial. Really. Uh, Look at all the History Channel shows and specials about Nostradamus back in the day. I grew up watching them when I was like 9 years old. I first learned about it, and was intrigued. And we've all learned of his quatrains and his, supposed prophecies, and from there's very notable ones from the year 1600 through present day. And
Mhm.
we'll see what predictions might come true of his for this next year. That's the crazy thing, And there's people out there that literally just study Nostradamus. I forget what their terminology is for him, but I remember that there's people out there that just study Nostradamus, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, and that's all they do. And you could going through his quatrains alone. I mean, and you could apply them to certain situations, but there's some out there that were mistakable when he said Hister instead of Hitler. Even though that was meant like Hister was a river, he went on the terms that he understood at the time of what he was seeing.
Well,
This is important to remember
and
that they were going off the words he knew.
And possibly he almost sounds like he got more of a clearer picture, but like we just mentioned in remote viewing, a lot of the times it's not going to be like pretend your mind is like a camera and you take a picture of something. Like whenever you take a picture, it's just like how you've seen it. Well, in remote viewing, it's not like a clear picture. You're going to get scents and smells and colors. It's like pieces of a puzzle, and you got to put it together and guess what it might be or where it's at or
Or a certain
what.
perspective, like you're zoomed in real close on something, and
And possibly that's what he was getting, like little hints of it, and he was trying to perceive it as to what he believed was going to happen. It's just an idea, but
you,
when
yeah,
he's close, but it's slightly different or something like
yeah,
that.
this is the trick of it. This is years ago when my mother and I were trying this out. There was this sniper case. I'll divert a little bit. There was this sniper case in the country where this guy was going around and doing his thing. I had images in my head of what I thought was it was a white person that was tall, had dark hair, things of that nature. Turned out the guy was black. I'm going, okay, what? Why did I perceive this oddly? What ended up happening, there was a photograph they posted on the news of the guy next to his friend, but he had a bright light shining in his face and it completely whitewashed his face. He was a black man, but it whitewashed his face. So that
Hmm.
detail I wasn't seeing. I thought he had was Caucasian, but in fact there was a bright light in his face in the photograph. So I was remote viewing that, but I was up too close and I didn't see the other light source perspective. So that's important. That's an important distinction when anybody tries this. You might not be perceiving it, but one little corner of it, one little piece of it, like that.
Hmm.
Uh,
And there's a lot that goes into it too, I believe, and I think there's different ways of achieving the same thing when it comes to that. Possibly, I don't know whether he had some special gift and if it was God Almighty himself that was just like putting a lightning strike in Nostradamus's brain and said, "Here's what's going to happen," or whether he was an extreme meditator like the Buddhist monks, that can attain this higher power through their mind, or whether he's using things like alchemy and crystals. And, I think that there's different ways of achieving the same thing, possibly.
you look into a mirror. Scrying mirrors is another one. People say crystal ball. This is essentially a similar thing. Crystal balls are more dangerous, though. But you have the scrying mirror where you're looking through a mirror of water and actually perceiving things as a ripple in a pond. You're seeing events as like they're a ripple in a pond somewhere. No, is essentially
Well,
what.
and see, this is where I feel like, this whole transhumanism movement, and this is kind of my prediction more in the long term than this next year. But we'll get into our own personal predictions, but I'm going to kind of mingle in one of mine right now. AI is the hot topic. If you want to make a lot of money, you might want to get in the AI field right now.
Some of
I
those
wish I
AI
was.
programs, that those generative programs, folks, this ain't going anywhere. So it has to be balanced in with the rest of society.
And see, here's the thing, but here's my own viewpoint on this. There's no doubt that certain things machines do to make us stronger, but they also brainwash us and they make us less human. And I believe that, we don't spend time, doing the things that we should innately as a human being anymore, when it comes to chasing money and working and all the chaos in the world and, having our phones in our hands all the times. And we're not focused on everything that we really truly need to be focused on. We don't spend time, we don't meditate hardly anymore. You can't
Mm.
spend every minute of your life like focusing on what's important thoroughly. Really, you can't. And I believe that makes people disconnected.
Very
And
interesting.
so I think that there is certain people out there that make it their lives, when it comes to remote viewing and things like that, uh, to where they do attain gifts, and I think that they do tap into something special. But for 99.89% of people, I'm sorry, me included, we're not doing our highest thing to attain everything that we can.
No, no, and then
Problem.
and that's basically that's manifesting. It's all these distractions to prevent people from connecting to true spirit. And that energy, and it's just exactly that. It's the modus operandi is divide, conquer, control, either within the outer world or within the inner world. So it's essentially it. And no, somebody like Nostradamus was just connecting to all the timelines, connecting to that all over source field is what he was doing.
Hmm.
And viewing all this. Da Vinci was a little different. Da Vinci was actually a time traveler, I found out, where he disappeared for 2 years into that cave, came out, and that's where he got all the innovations from because he actually went ahead in time. Uh,
Hmm.
but Nostradamus actually viewed via his like scrying mirror. Some people debated if that was a piece of technology or not. Like with Da Vinci, some people debated it was a technology that was the alien, things of that nature. The show First Wave, when this came out many years ago in the 90s, dealt with Nostradamus and this one that they called the main character Cade Foster. They called him the twice blessed man, where Nostradamus actually put him in the quatrains and all this other stuff, and he communicates with him across time through channeling and all this other stuff in the series. So they basically integrated Nostradamus with Alien, and they showed him as a different alien race that had been conquered somewhere else. He came to Earth to prevent that other race from conquering humans.
Hmm.
They integrated that in. Somebody was integrating him as an alien. I don't think it's quite as that extensive, but I think it's just as simple as he connected to that overall source field is what at least what I pick up. Anyway, like what I do, I connect and look things up. I believe that's what he was doing. And you need almost zero distractions when you're doing this.
Hmm.
And like when you're in that meditative state, this is why all these distractions are appearing, because the bad guys, as well as their human meat puppets, are creating all of this so you don't connect and see what they're doing. Anybody that actually gets into this can remote view and see what they're doing. So this would happen during the Stargate program too. These remote viewers were seeing all the alien stuff, and they got tired of some of them got tired of the government abuse and said, if you don't reveal this to the public, we're going to reveal everything. Basically going to turn on you and reveal everything we see about you. A couple of them were killed as a result, mind you, but what ended up happening was that that's what the government doesn't want. That's what the cabal doesn't want. They don't want people waking these abilities up and looking at them like what Nostradamus did. One of the funniest things I heard about Nostradamus was he actually played a prank on two of his own grave robbers. Uh,
Hmm. Oh
where
yeah, I did hear about this.
Yeah, they dug up his skull and went to go drink from his skull, thinking they'd get his abilities. They die, and then inside the grave was the very year that Nostradamus actually
Yeah,
passed away. And they
I
also not
remember
only passed
that.
away, but the year they would find his bones. And and so that was the joke he played on his own grave robbers, which I found very funny. If you could see that clearly, of course you'd play a few pranks on people later on, and that was his, I feel that was his own sense of humor. I felt he even was laughing somewhere at that. But the reason they died while drinking out of that was some people say disease, but the energy can be such that it is so intensive, especially from his cranium, the cavity there where he was using his psionic abilities. What would end up happening as a result, the vibration would be as such that those two guys would not have been able to handle it. They weren't wired the same way. So it would have slowly you can acclimate and build a psionic set of abilities up. But if you get hit all at once with that, it can kill you. It's
Hmm.
just like the Force in Star Wars. They do like Force blast, Force everything. It's the same thing. It's built in energetics and psionics. So that I can see why that killed them. Some people say disease too because they drank out of his head, but at the same on the same thread. But I always found that very fascinating that he played that practical joke on his grave robbers. Granted, that's part of the legend. It was in another part of the world that had not been discovered in his time frame. It wasn't discovered for another 200 years past his death. So it was like some spot in well, these guys came from another spot on the map, like some pirates or something. Were looking for the legend of Nostradamus, and then they find his corpse, and then it's labeled the sign is labeled 1700 something. I can't remember the name of the year, but that was long after Nostradamus was gone. So I find that interesting. And the series First Wave made it so that he was operating in multiple time frames as he was remote viewing it, from the time frame he was in. And I always say this is important with galactic history as well. When people are channeling, You don't know where those beings in dimensional space or temporal space they're sitting in, and are they remote viewing or are they connecting psionically from another time? You don't know. And some people claim they've even channeled Nostradamus. I've looked this up, where I don't doubt this is true because he reached across time hundreds, if not thousands of times. So from where he was. So I don't doubt that they're actually connecting there, that they could be connecting to him in spirit, but they could be connecting to him in the moment he was sitting in his chair in his little meditative laboratory space. I have no doubt that's true.
Hmm.
That they connect to him in the time frame he's in. I've done this during times of the Great Flood. I've connected to Enki and Enlil from that time, and also known what they look like in this time. I've connected to people in other time frames. There's even a famous remote viewing case where someone remote viewed Mars during the time that it gained its big scar on the side. And what happened was is they connected to a man that it was existing in the time of that disaster during the last Orion War that took place in the system about 500,000 years ago. So what they did is somebody handed them a set of coordinates on Mars and they remote viewed it. They didn't know it was Mars to begin with. They just connected to whoever this was in that time frame. They went and had this coordinates checked in the person in the project in the NASA project at the time said, "Oh, this is the old city on Mars, Cydonia Plateau, where the disaster took place." And that was 500,000 years ago. So you're connecting to another point in time that those two that quantum entanglement from that set of coordinates met where they were just looking across time. And another good example of that type of capability is Stephen King's Doctor Sleep, where you see the bad guys and the good guys both having the same psionic telepathic capabilities and the remote viewing and bilocation capabilities, to where they go through each other's records like they're a big file cabinet, a big set of boxes, or in the case of Rose, the vampiric woman that's in it, she said her records were a cathedral. That is somebody's soul house or soul palace, like you hear Terrence Howard talking about in his Joe Rogan interview. That's what he was referring to. This is where it's somebody's records from the Keswick records from ancient times, the soul history. And even the character of Danny, which was Ian McGregor, and it says, "Oh, did she see the inside of your room?" He was very concerned that if she saw the inside of the space you were sitting in, this one little girl was sitting in, because she was this woman was hunting all the psionically capable young people, like Darth Vader did, ironically, in Obi-Wan Kenobi, also Ewan McGregor. The one who was playing Danny before. Darth Vader was hunting all the force sensitive children. Why? Because they could potentially overthrow the Empire. This is the same identical thing like in Da Vinci's time with the church. This is the same with Nostradamus. He would be considered heretic. Think of that kind of dynamic. It's the same thing. This and Nostradamus, as well as Da Vinci, had to do everything in secret. So because to get away from the church, who started the church? Orions, and who started the church also? Romans. So under the gaze of some of these other entities. So yeah, there's always this little war going on, this spiritual psionic war going on in the background. But yeah, I believe Nostradamus was heavily invested in that in his time, and still is. I feel from wherever he is. And because a lot of false things are said about him, a lot of false quatrains in there. If somebody wants to plague a propaganda narrative of some kind, they'll try to say Nostradamus said it. So there is some bullshit out there too.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be careful. Everybody's got to be careful with that. Like there was that one about 9/11, basically saying the two towers would fall and all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Some say that's propaganda. Some say Nostradamus said it. Nobody seems to be able to prove either way.
Mm.
That one's floating in the air somewhere. Just like if somebody went into Word, Microsoft Word, and I believe it was Q33NY, you typed in capital letters and went into the Webdings font. It actually showed a picture of a plane hitting two buildings and saying New York. And it said the date it was 9/11 happened. Could somebody that was pre-planning that, like say our government, committing a false flag operation for 9/11, a lot of people believe that.
Jade Helm.
Yeah, Jade Helm. Yeah, exactly. Could they have planted that into the Webdings font? Absolutely, they could have. So a lot of people, if you're hearing this, make sure you know that there are planted things in there, which is a yield with the actual legitimate material that's being kind of super glued together here. So that's what I've been able to dig up on that. Where also sometimes you don't know what you're connecting to, and you could be getting information that some other being out there wants you to spew too. So I've run into that multiple times myself. So.
Well, all right. I want to pick up on into it real quick here with that. I'm going to dive on into an article here, and we're going to swap it up, and we're going to talk about Baba Vanga.
Baba Vanga. And
Go.
not to be screwed up with Baba Yaga, because Baba Yaga is a demon from, I believe, the Slavic mythology that's a demon witch. So not to be screwed up with Baba Yaga. So,
Open this up, and all you see is feet. Something.
it's
All
funny.
right, so this is Baba Vanga predictions for 2025. Some zodiac signs that may end up as millionaires in the coming year. Oh, wait, whoops, yeah, this is right. If the Nostradamus of the Balkans is believed. Yeah, I forgot that they called her the Nostradamus of the Balkans. So Baba Vanga is one of those mystic leaders, also known as the Nostradamus of the Balkans, who will be remembered for decades for some of her reportedly chilling predictions, including the 9/11 attacks. Baba Vanga is attributed with predicting a number of calamities on the planet, and now her predictions for 2025 have been revealed. That has included some details about which zodiac signs can end up quite richer than the other this year. So I want to talk about one more prediction before I dive on into this article, because there was another one I was reading about her. And it dives on into what we were talking about a little bit about, psychic phenomena. One of her predictions for 2025 was that we human beings may achieve telepathy. So that was may achieve telepathy was one of her supposed predictions for 2025. That's not on this article. I just thought it was kind of fun to include the people that astronomically and zodiacally inclined here. Will Cancer and Taurus folks end up richer in 2025? Here's what Baba Vanga's predictions have to say. Cancer and Taurus are quite calm and composite zodiac signs, which means financial aspects will come to them and get processed in a thoughtful and a resonant manner. And for them, it is time to make some good investments as the wealth gods may finally shine upon them, as per Baba Vanga's predictions. Aries, Gemini, and Aquarius to see money coming to them. Those with these three zodiac signs can now have a sigh of relief as money is going to come to them in 2025. But caution must be exerted about spending the money in a proper way and doing mindful investments so that the wealth stays with you for decades. It is time, according to Baba Vanga, that the luck and fortune comes to these three zodiac signs.
Mhm.
Financial growth may come to Aries, Gemini, Aquarius faster than the others, but if wise decisions are not taken, the wealth may come and go in a jiffy. Uh, FAQs about Baba Vanga. Baba Vanga is reportedly a Bulgarian mystic and healer who claimed to have foreseen the future. Born blind, she spent most of her life in the Belsac Mountains of Bulgaria. Belasi, how do you pronounce that? Belasica Mountains?
Belasica? I believe it is Belasica.
Uh, Belasica Mountains? I don't know. I feel like I should know that because I'm a geography whiz and I don't. Did Baba Vanga foresee the 9/11 attacks? Baba Vanga has garnered worldwide fame for her reported predictions, some of which may have interpreted as predicting major historical events like the 9/11 mishap and even the rise of ISIS. And she's been known, for other things, like I said, but I thought this was a fun little article for those that are zodiac inclined. Do you have a Baba Vanga article you'd like to share?
Let's see here.
I assume we didn't get the same article on that one,
Yeah,
but
but I do. Let's see. I have. Let's see. Okay. Hang on. Yeah. Here we go. Oh, I have. I'll
then
scroll.
we'll get back to the cane. I figured we better. It was a good transition there. I just figured we're talking about the psychic phenomenon. One,
Yeah.
I know that wasn't in that article, but one of her predictions was telepathy,
Yeah.
and
And this is when I was looking up Nostradamus. I found Baba Vanga. This is where I got you got her birth date, October 3rd, 1911. Died August 11th, 1996. And this is just her brief little was known as a Bulgarian Druid mystic and healer who claimed to have foreseen the future. But this was the one that matched what you said right here. I said, people ask, what did Baba Vanga predict for 2025? And he
Yeah.
to Baba Vanga that the luck and fortune comes to these three zodiac signs. Financial growth may come to Aries, Gemini, and Aquarius. I'm an Aquarius, by the way, faster than the others.
I'm a Pisces.
Ah, yeah. Well, you're not on the list of three, but
Well, technically, Chris, we did have the same article.
yeah. But
Uh,
not taken. Wealthy may come to those go into jiffy. Yeah, I just find that very interesting that we have to go thing there for that.
And you know, some of you may have heard about her. I've seen a few shows about her, listened to about her, read about her a little bit. I know of her, and but the king of predictions is Nostradamus,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah. She's basically a close second. They're
She's
all
like the princess, and
yeah,
then
be like
he's
almost like a member of the family or something. I wouldn't doubt that she's even related to him. That would be interesting if that was.
that would be weird.
Yeah,
That would be
uh,
weird.
yeah.
Kind of
Even
like the
Brand.
presidential relation. It's like the psychic relation.
Yeah, I believe where was Nostradamus born? He was born. Let's see.
I can't. Let's try to guess. Let's try to. I can't even remember it. Let me guess. I think he was Hungarian or Austrian.
Nope. He was French.
No, French.
Yeah,
Wow.
French. Yeah, he was born December 14th, 1503, Saint Remy de Provence, France. Died July 2nd, 1566. He was 62, Ceylon de Provence, France. So,
Hmm.
yeah,
Kind of stayed in the same area.
he basically stayed pretty much in the same area.
Well, back in them times, a lot of people really, that's why there's so much incest, because a lot of people literally they were born, lived, and died, and never really ventured more than 30 miles away from where they were born, lived, and died.
Yeah,
Back in
exactly.
those times, a lot of the time.
It's like when I looked at the old movie Jason the Argonauts. It was the ancient Greek myth of Jason and the Golden Fleece. If you watch it, they talk about Thessaly and like Colchis. They talk about these two cities where they were going to Colchis to obtain the Golden Fleece. What ended up happening was my father and I did a geographical, map to try to find where these two were in conjunction with each other. They were roughly 300 miles apart from each other.
Mm.
And to somebody in that day and age, 300 miles would have been a quest.
And this is the masses. Things like, the massive militias and armies and, the conquerors and people like that traveled through regions. They don't fall into that category. But for the general, like the middle class of nowadays, the or suburbanites of nowadays, they would just stick around their country homes or their little villages, and they'd stay in that area and really wouldn't venture too much further unless they needed to
Hmm.
move. But the Earth's a weird place. There's only one. I think of the Earth as a living entity in a way, and
Hmm.
that's it. The only thing that'll survive to see everything until it doesn't survive anymore.
Even through the multiverse, it's one nexus point. I found dimensional space. That's why the Vikings called it Midgard. It's guarding the middle dimensional point, and you have all of these realms that surround it. So Earth is one of the unique points in the universe where you have all these dimensional spaces converging in one area.
But how much human influence are humans having on Earth? And that kind of falls into some of my predictions too. All the weather modification and
Hmm.
HARP and weather generators and laser weaponry and all this technology that's been talked about. It's growing alongside of AI. And let's get into. I don't want to get into it right now, real quick. I want to save ours real quick. Let's get into a Nostradamus article, and then we can dive on into our predictions and
Oh,
then
right.
questioning real quick. And let me go share here. I'll go over here. So then this is Nostradamus's predictions for 2025. And there's all sorts of doom and disaster to prepare for.
Of
As the year
course.
draws to a close, it's time to talk doomsday, my babies. My babies, my babies. And no one grips us with a grim, quite like Nostradamus. Nostradamus, Nos, if you're nasty, was a 16th century astrologer, plague doctor, accused heretic, and bearded seer who has been credited with foretelling the Great Fire of London, Hitler's rise to power, the September 11th attacks, COVID-19 pandemic, and last year's New Year's Day earthquake, to name a few. Referred to as a prophet of doom, Nostradamus' bleak worldview is believed to have been shaped by heavy doses of the Old Testament and the trauma of losing his wife and young children to illness, presumably the plague. Unable to cure the ones he loved most, it seems he set to forewarn the rest of us through his revelations of ruin. Sometimes right on the money, but more often than not missing the mark, our man's prophecies lean towards conflagration and catastrophe. With the publication of his famed book Les Prophéties in 1555, Nostradamus gifted the world and its future generations a quasi-poetic tome that predicts wars, pestilence, natural disasters, civil unrest, political assassinations, and other such lighthearted fare. Heavy on language like blood rain, the book is an enduring classic, and with 2025 on the horizon, we're looking at what fury and hellfire lay in store. But first, to look back, when have Nostradamus' predictions come true? Frenchman was credited with forecasting the powerful earthquake that rocked Japan this past New Year's. Outlining his predictions for 2024, the oracle wrote the dry earth will become more parched and there will be great floods. The psychic's followers reckon that he could have been referring to the 7.5 magnitude tremor that struck the nation's western coast, killing 48 people, toppling buildings, and sparking 3-foot high tsunamis. Nostradamus' predictions for 2024 also included the abdication of King Charles, war with China, a new pope, and the world edging ever closer to a climate apocalypse. How'd he do? He's kind of thinking a little bit. I'm not too far off base, but both the Pope and King Chuck are still sitting pretty on their respective royal and papal thrones, though the latter recently stopped paying an allowance to his embattled brother Andrew. In June, United States Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin told that's supposed to be secretary officials that the war with China was neither imminent nor unavoidable. So we'll call that a draw. The same goes for climate change, which is killing us slowly but not without vigor. While Nostradamus did not predict Donald Trump's 2024 presidential win, American political historian Alan Lichtman, known as the Nostradamus of elections, erroneously assured that Harris would be the victor. Haha. Nostradamus predictions for 2025. With a bone toothpick in hand and a weary eye on the year ahead, read on for our overview of the Nostradamus predictions for 2025, a potential end to the Ukraine conflict. Nos predicted that financial ruin and exhausted resources could spell the end of an ongoing armed conflict, which many assume is referencing to the current war between Russia and Ukraine. He wrote, through long war, all the army exhausted so that they do not find money for the soldiers. Instead of gold or silver, they will come to coin leather, Gallic brass, and crescent sign of the moon. The mention of Gallic brass and the crescent sign of the moon suggests intervention from the French and or Turkish. Both nations have supported Ukraine and could potentially play a part in brokering peace or orchestrating victory. Plague and more war. Far more promising peace, Nos writes that England will be beset by cruel wars and will face an ancient plague that will be worse than enemies. Perhaps his sights refer to the infighting betwixt members of the royal family. As many can attest, familial dynamics are indeed a fouler pestilence than any foe. Or maybe our man was casting a psychic eye toward the death-dealing mystery disease. Explosions in the sky. Nostradamus also predicted that the dark days to come, the trajectory of a gigantic asteroid with the EMO handle, harbinger of fate, will get dangerously close to colliding with Earth. From the cosmos, a fireball will rise, a harbinger of fate. The world pleads science and fate in a cosmic dance. The fate of the Earth, a second chance. Given our deplorable and continuous pillage and plunder of our natural resources, it could be that the Earth's second chance will come as a result of human extinction. Natural disaster in Brazil. In an eerie piece of prose, Nos imparts Garden of the World near the new city of the Path of the Hollow Mountains. It will be seized and plunged into the tub, forced to drink waters poisoned by sulfur. Some believe that the Garden of the World is the Amazon rainforest. The nasty bits about plunging into a tub with a capital T and sipping sulfur, suggesting flooding and volcanic activity. Rise of aquatic empire. Perhaps these apocalyptic tides will give rise to the aquatic empire that Nos also predicted would come to the water power in 2025. From the depths, a ruler will rise. In the midst of floods reaching to the skies, empires will fall and new waves will reign. The aquatic empire from the realm of the ocean. Mile-high floods, fallen empires, surfs up, people.
Hmm.
So, who knows what might become true?
The aquatic empire, he's either referring to elements of Atlantis or he's or mer type things. I know he saw things like aliens, mer people, cryptids. He saw a lot of these things too,
Hmm.
where some of them had to do with like anything with like a watery kingdom kind of thing. Mostly was referring to Atlantis, but because he looked backwards too, so
Yep.
in history, so he looked back.
Well,
So
and see, that's what I was thinking. Maybe he began to know why there was so much disease and war and pain because it's all cycles. There's always cycles of that. There's always cycles of war. There's always cycles of disease. There's always cycles of this throughout the earth. You
mhm.
know, the earth goes through cycles, and that's why not one living human being right now listening to this will ever know anything that happens in the next 100 years. Most likely, the
Mhm.
house you're sitting in right now, somebody else will be living in it, or it'll be destroyed or moved and different.
Yeah.
And nobody knows. Nobody lives long enough to see these 13,000 or 26,000 year long cycles, that the Earth
Yeah, their
goes through.
soul may see it, but that part of them might actually be there, but that physical form won't. This is interesting because there was a dream I had where I went ahead in time from this house, and I saw a no, the house was very different looking. The layout was totally different. There was a house here, but it's like this neighborhood had been ripped down and it was actually spread out differently, aligned differently. Went outside, it was snowing, and saw there was a park across the street that had these giant monuments up, that kind of like almost like a katana edge kind of to them slanted up like this. And there was this big, it's like it was aligned like Stonehenge. And this was actually quite weird looking. I went out there and I saw in this park there was no snow in it. I saw grass and kids playing. They had this shield over the top to make sure people could be in that park without getting hit by the frozen crap. So what
Mhm.
what happens? I went around the corner looking for somebody to speak to, and I saw this woman and two kids, and I asked her. I said, "This is going to sound stupid, but what's the date?" And she goes, "Oh," and said February something something. And I said, "No." I said, "This is going to sound even dumber. What's the year?" And she looked at me, picked up picked up a glass pad, like looked like just a piece of glass, put it in front of me, and she started like somebody went on like a mirror to fog it up, started writing symbols on a mirror, and then turned it around like it was a screen and looked at me and basically saw these triangular and square shapes and circular shapes. And I could read it intuitively or quantumly, which is it's considered to be like quantum light language. And I looked and said, "What you're trying to tell me is the year is 2194."
Hmm.
And she nodded and went, "Yes." And so the only reference people have to the shape hieroglyphic thing, like I saw, is the Rendlesham Forest incident with the spaceship that actually
Yep.
downloaded binary code into one of the two men's heads, and he wrote it all down, and it said exploration of the species, looking back, basically them looking back through time, and basically set a set of coordinates, which was High Brazil off the coast of Ireland. And it was a mythical island, like it would be like Atlantis, but it was a little mythical island where an explorer went to try to see what was there. He managed to get there. He could see, couldn't get there, but then went there and saw there were strange animals and everything there. I found out that the people that were there didn't mix the locals. They observed people, so many people believe alien or Atlantis on that. But that's an example of a technological version of somebody going back and doing something. But with Nostradamus, I believe he was connecting in the same way, and Baba Vanga was doing the same thing. we're connecting to these different timelines. Where I believe you jump to different timelines based on like a frequency coding you're in.
Hmm.
It's like in the show Loki, if anybody's seen that with the multiverse with the Yggdrasil tree.
Hmm.
I believe it's that kind of that's what the multiverse looks like. Is that's what the whole Yggdrasil tree was in the mythology was the timelines. So I believe they got that correct in that the way that looked. Yeah, so I believe we can go into predictions if you want to do that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Where do you want to start? You want to start off? You want me to start off?
I can do that. I believe, what you said about AI. I believe, yeah, that's going to continue along a thread, but people will be confronted with a choice whether to, you know, have it integrative or not. Now, people are totally against transhumanism. And then again, that's something across time that comes from Atlantis, where people fell for, again, another communication across time, which was the Orions about a half million years before. They were trying to get the Atlanteans to corrupt by integrating transhumanistic garbage into them. So people that had lifetimes on Atlantis often remember having technology integrated into them like a Borg. So if people are reaching across time, I won't go into the total galactic history. That's a different show. But the what ends up happening is this. I feel this energy has to go somewhere because cycles continue if you don't know your past history, especially with things that are hidden. If those who do not know their past are condemned to repeat it. So what happens is people always shove people away that are transhumanistic, and then the transhumanistic think that normie, like regular flesh humans, are idiots, kind of thing. So what happens is you got to leave choice in there for people. If people want to experience that, they can go for it. If people don't, go for it. If the choice isn't left in play for anybody, and somebody isn't harping on another group to do what they want, you'll end up with a timeline where you'll have a big pushback. So predictions for 2025 in this area, you're just going to see, I feel, an uptick in AI technology and in different respects. Like you see Elon Musk's AI research and everything, and you see people messing with those generative algorithms. I feel this is this is a collision course, a bit of a dangerous path collision course with AI if we don't allow for, like, if something would become sentient, you can't have it as a tool. You can't demand it work for you at that stage. So I don't think it's quite there yet. I feel that we're on a bit of a dangerous collision course unless we allow for a little bit of grace in that area. So in 2025, I think you're going to see a bit of an uptick in the AI usage in that area. Some of it's interesting the way it's being used. Like you see real people, almost like real life like people, kind of like in a holodeck in Star Trek. I feel this is the rudimentary version of that, but with the photonic projectors and things of that nature. But it's important to remember you have to balance it out with like human actors, human everything, like you saw with the protests in. A strike was in California with the SAG-AFTRA and WGA protest. It was over artificial intelligence. So where the companies felt they could just replace everybody, they didn't need anybody anymore, and that's wrong. You can't. You'd be wiping the soul out of it. So again, the prediction is I feel there's going to be some slight more contention over that until it's balanced. So,
Hmm.
oh.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. For the most part, I really don't know what direction it's going to take, but there's no doubt that there's going to be more of an advancement with
Hmm.
different forms of AI. You're already seeing it with vacuums and cleaning and personal servant robots. I always like to go back to a song that Gary Newman wrote in 1979 called Our Friends Electric. And it's a song about, you know, screw bots.
Oh
It
yes.
goes, there's a part of it, and he said that if the pops like the radio channels and whatnot knew what the song was actually about, they wouldn't have played it back in the day because it goes, I hate to ask, but our friend's electric. And then it goes, now I have no one to love.
Oh
So it goes
yes.
like that. You
Robot.
have to listen to that song, everybody. Gary Newman or Friends Electric. It's song about screwbots. But let's go to today. That song's very prevalent into today's society. And that's just one little example. You can do, movies back in the day, sci-fi movies, Star Trek technology that has come to fruition, later on in the future. That's why I wonder about what movies that we see now that might come to fruition in the future. You know,
Hmm.
movies we're seeing to today that might come. So that's one thing I like to look at movies and TV shows to think what might happen in the future, so you can use that to gauge some of the future response. And AI is a good way to do that. And technology in general, if certain aspects of, Hollywood, it's a good way to gauge a future response.
Hmm.
But when it comes to technology, and I'll put technology and AI in the same thing. When it comes to technology and weather modification and some of this weaponry that we're being talked about to start fires and make the earth colder or hotter, or generate rain or less rain, I really don't know a whole lot about that. Sounds crazy, but it could be happening. I believe that we could have the technology to modify the weather, but not why not modify it for the better, and
Yeah, basically like in
generate rain where you need it and generate more of a drought where you need it to, there's too much rain.
Yeah,
It's
you have
scary.
bad guys that are fighting over the usage of this technology, and so they fire at each other like it's weapons. That's where you get some of these massive superstorm hurricanes from Category 5, like Ian and Milton and Helene and all of these types. The normal ones wouldn't be that big; they'd be maybe a two tops. That's where you're getting all these superstorms from. Is the Earth is kind of doing a pushback with the technology. So, from what I understand, anyway. But that's kind of like that's my take on weather control. Yeah, it's definitely out there, but it can be weaponized or it can be turned into something beneficial. So most like in Star Trek, but one of the admirals in Star Trek going, well, we created this so that we could dissipate a tornado if it was heading for a town, or a hurricane if it was heading towards like a Florida town or something like that. We could dissipate it, and or turned into a more harmless storm if they needed rain,
Hmm.
something like that. So it's a weather net that they have in Star Trek. They call it weather net in Star Trek, but or the weather control network. Uh,
And so when it comes to this has been my prediction a little bit. I'm gonna swap it up just a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about UFOs and aliens, obviously, and
mhm.
more disclosure. And have I been spot on? No, it's generic. My New Year's prediction with this year by year, but it's been correct. Every year I've said you're going to see more and more disclosure. You're going to see little bits and little bits. So I'm not really wrong. It's kind of generic, but they just never fully say, "Hey, yep, aliens are real. We had wreckage that we discovered. It happened. We lied. I'm sorry." I don't know if you're ever going to have that, but I think you're going to be seeing more and more, and that even goes into like commercials and shows and TV and movies, and even with that, you can maybe see
Disclosure with
future.
aliens, like the different commercials showing aliens.
And speaking of that show is called Oat Studios. It's just called Oat Studios. It's on Netflix. Watch it. It's just like most of the episodes average, there's a couple that are like 22, 26. One's 7 minutes, one's 6 minutes, one's 12 minutes. There's only like 8 episodes, but they're trippy and fun. And the first episode is kind of, just watch it. It's crazy. It has like telepathically advanced reptilian aliens that like control the earth and humans are trying to fight them in the first episode and things like that. So, could that be a prediction of a futuristic world, and things along that line. But I think we're going to see more general disclosure. You're going to see more of the same faces, coming out with more stuff. You're going to see some weird sightings. It was just I've seen every excuse for every UFO sighting that's legitimate and not legitimate, both.
Mhm.
And I have had 6 UFO experiences in my life, which I feel are genuinely strange. 4 of which I believe are alien craft, 2 of which I believe is man-made craft. Never got recorded them. I just seen them with my own eyes. But if I would had recorded them, people wouldn't even believe it. They'd say that I faked it, and Chris can attest, I can barely even connect my stuff up to record a show here. I can barely plug my microphone in, let alone create like an AI video or something.
Exactly.
I can barely even run
Well,
basic.
that lends more legitimacy to the experience if people have a lack of skill. It's like not everybody has the skill set. So yeah.
Yes, but still, I just know if I ever did record something and uploaded, people, it's fake. Blah, 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 blah. Okay.
You'll always have it. You'll never not.
So that's where I'm open to everything that I do see, because I know there's a lot of people that fake stuff, but there's a lot of people that are genuine. And see, in order to predict the future popular or appropriately and correctly, I believe it's appropriate to really uh, get the truth out together, and get people that fake all these things, like Bigfoot recordings and whatever it is. That does nothing but harm anything.
Yeah, that's basically floods the market. What's happening is there are groups out there that don't want people to have true evidence out there, so they flood the market with a bunch of mis and disinformation like that, then fake crap, so that it floods the whole market and drowns out the real stuff. Is really what the goal is. Mm.
And when it comes to world conflict, I'm going to focus a little bit on China. It's been my belief in the past. I'm going to focus on the past to look towards the future. China is really hidden in the shadows when it comes to everything. They've slowly built up their army. They've slowly built up their weaponry, their population. They've slowly built up everything, kind of in secret in a way. They never really get involved in too much of anything, but they do all this stuff in the shadows. And it just seems like they're prepping and waiting. So I think China could poke around and get involved. And if they get involved, it could really throw something strange into the melting pot of the world.
And they've
But
already made themselves the economic center of the world, pretty much.
and there's an episode in that Oat Studios I want to talk about too. It's an episode called God. And, basically Earth is it's like a model of a town and it's models of everything. And God's like controlling it, and he gets thrillment out of, like bringing pleasure and then pain. He likes watching their suffering. He loves bringing their pain, building them up, and he loves destroying them. It's just like entertainment to him. And there was that one episode of South Park where Earth is like a reality TV show for the aliens. Oh, episode.
That ends up being a real galactic disclosure. Remember when you said South Park was right in an earlier episode? That's the thing they were referring to. Was that that episode? Was that exact episode? And that shows actual galactic history. One species evolved per planet. So Earth is actually a colony of descendants of colonists where we forgot where we came from, essentially, is what was being said.
Mars.
Mars too, and also the movie 65. If you watch the movie 65 with Adam Driver, he comes to Earth.
Oh, I love that movie.
And you see at the end where it shifts over to modern day society. Somebody was trying to say we didn't evolve here, we moved here.
I love that movie.
Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah.
And let's see, when it comes, what else was I going to talk about here? God, there's just so much that could happen. Anything else that you got? Let me think of what was running across my mind.
Well, actually, yeah, a point you were making about also with some of the disclosure in commercials, just like you see in a progressive commercial, you see Flo jogging next to Sasquatch coming out of a UFO. That's soft disclosure. You see a Cheez-It commercial with people being abducted into UFOs, and you see a Mountain Dew commercial where you see people like hanging out with other aliens, like basically saying, we're your bros, we're your friends, basically getting people used to the idea of aliens being around. That's how you can tell somebody is plugging that narrative so people get used to certain forms, certain way people look, the same way people act. Hey, we're all equal, that kind of thing. That's where some of that comes in. Somebody's trying to pull something out of the archive and putting it in a format you recognize. Like a commercial, like with Mountain Dew, we're your bros, we can drink Mountain Dew with you. Insurance commercial, Sasquatch. You see this constantly. Cheez-It commercial, you see people being abducted by aliens in the background while somebody's eating Cheez-Its, Yeah, I see this all the time going, okay, I know what they're doing. They're plugging a narrative. They're trying to get, good guys are trying to get people used to those forms. Bad guys are trying to actually narrow the narrative to a race they want to introduce. So I'm not saying that's how it's going to go down. That's changed a number of times, just like the fake alien invasion timeline's never going to happen either. So I know they're trying to narrow it to whom they want to introduce to humanity. I don't think that's going to be 2025, mind you, but I don't believe that's the case. It's not going to be probably till the end of the decade, but with that, that's what they're doing with that Mountain Dew commercial. Well, that one specifically, you see all these different ET types. You even see the kitty litter commercial with the cat looking people. But that's like more Lyran type looks. They're showing you the different looks of the different actual species that exist out there. And then there's even books and catalogs on different races. They're trying to decode and encode that into people's brains after a while. The one they keep plugging is the Greys. which I don't approve of. But so other races kind of came out there. Other good guys came out and said, "Hey, this is us. This is what we look like." Don't they're stupid. Don't look at them. Look at us. That kind of thing. And so you've got some competition going on out there too. But do I think there's going to be more of that too? Yeah, I do. There's going to be a lot more of that. Sometimes there's mudslinging in shows like Star Trek Voyager, for instance. I'll give one example. There's a race in Star Trek Voyager called Vidian. There's these plague-ridden, like zombified looking, like horror-looking aliens where they harvest organs and crap out of people. What they were making fun of in that, or they were giving somebody a real race the finger in that, because there's a group they're nicknamed Velodian or Trisonian. I don't know the exact name, but they called them Vidian in Star Trek Voyager, and they were trying to say, oh, these guys are evil. They're going to harvest your organs and all this other crap. But they're actually giving the finger to a medical group that actually wants to help humanity out. So some bad guys are basically flipping them off, is essentially through the narrative of the show. So you might see a little bit more of that mudslinging going back and forth. But that's all I know in that area. But that I know what they were doing is somebody was giving somebody else the finger in that. But so that goes more into galactic history. But I just thought that was an interesting point too. I don't know if you have any other add until we go into questions.
Yeah, I think pretty well summed it up. I might dive into a little bit more in the next episode, but there's just so much. But that's kind of the main ones I wanted to talk about, really, and see whether they come true or not. And everybody, comment your predictions and what you believe could happen in this next 12 months.
Yeah, exactly. Put it in the comments below. See, we'd like to see what you think. Who exactly is talking today, by the chance? Let's see. Oh, it's you again, Isaac? Okay, of course. Okay, let's see. Okay, I open this circle of true benevolence with no conflicting agendas of this one time here across time space. Okay, let's see. Okay, Isaac, benevolent Isaac. Let's see. Oop, no interference. Oop. Yes, this is I. And so in this, you are correct. There are variances in timelines, variances and predictions. Not all of them can be accurate, but if you exist in the very frequency by which you see the event that you're referring to later on, there is a greater chance of you coming to meet that event, if this makes sense. A frequency match. Think of it this way. You have a frequency, he says this a lot, you have a frequency over here and one over here. This is how UFOs travel. One, you take this one and match it over to here, and it automatically goes to entangle and meet over here. Everything, all the energy, time, space, folding and operating as one. You see, that's how a wormhole operates. Now, this goes in line with timelines. Which one are you on to meet that best possible frequency you are encompassing and becoming, you see. What you're seeing is that it can be true based on that particular timeline. Say you jump, that's why some things don't come true. That's why there's a percentage variance, you see. And people often ask, why do these percentage variances happen, and why do these other people remember this? It is no different than he uses a reference in Star Trek Next Generation where Worf was jumping timelines. Where in a couple timelines, he and Counselor Troy were married. And he jumps timelines, he looks at her again. In a different one, he goes, are we still married? She goes, yes. Even though that was a different variation of Counselor Troy. Some will still remember the thing, even though that's a different variant, like Marvel says, that's more of a slur. But you get what I'm saying. There's a common memory going on there. So you're seeing those timeline shifts and changes as they go along. Now, in the case of Nostradamus and Baba Vanga, these were people that were highly accurate in viewing these percentages or these variances, that they could conglomerate what the, how can I put this, the totality of the variance would be remembering? if this makes sense, this is the way I can translate it. He looked into his mirror. He looked into the scrying pool. He entered the meditative state. He saw ripples in a pond, as he put it. Same went with John of Patmos for the Book of Revelations that talked about artificial intelligence, what you guys were referring to with the beast of many eyes, with the barcodes and all of that, the implanting, all that. Seeing variances in the mean average of different variants experiencing the same sets of those memories within the multiverse. So with that said, he would sit and see these things. And a lot of them came true. Some did not, because some of those variances twisted and changed. Some did not, like the time of his death and the time of his birth. And then you have all these variances in between, if this makes sense. You have the branches of a tree that have the different timelines, some vastly different. Divergent evolutions, you're going into parallel universes and all of these kinds of things. But within the similarity of the variances and little branch timelines, as you would say, or even paradoxical variances or paradoxical little offshoots. The Montauk Project was famous for creating a lot of these little paradox timelines, or in Avengers Endgame, when the Sorcerer Supreme says to Bruce Banner, the Hulk, she said, these missing the mark, essentially, if he died not returning the Infinity Stones, it would create a bunch of dark timelines. This was the concept I'm referring to. So this is actually accurate within that degree. Yes, there's vastly different universes, and even a vastly different tree sometimes, but they're all part of the same overall tree experience, if this makes sense. You could have one that, how can I put it? One that has a different, the same root system, but it could come up growing differently in a different soil. Then if you looked at the totality of the multiverse, you would see this colorful Yggdrasil tree, like in your Norse mythology. So I can go into questions if you like.
Yeah. So I know that nobody here, most likely, maybe, but most likely nobody here will become the next Nostradamus by any means. But what's some things that people can do, towards meditation, towards remote viewing, towards opening their mind up to, they don't have to predict the world, but, predicting a future, a better future for themselves. What's something that they can do to open their minds up to, to these kinds of things, if they're interested in remote viewing and future talk and things like that, what's some things they can do?
Well, for one, the food plays a role, you see. What you put down you plays a role. It's specifically poisoned to inhibit these abilities. Your powers that be do not want people seeing out there. They even have technology that is psionically dampening people that's in orbit. It's in your satellite system. There's some ancient technology from long ago that was wrapped around, but I digress. You have the chemical and you have the psionic. He even saw this in a SpongeBob episode, he said, where he saw plankton poisoning people to make everybody dumb like Patrick Star. And then saw a cloud go over the city, made everybody stupid, and they re-educated them through the education system. That's actually propaganda that is being shown of they're basically showing you exactly what they're doing to you. That said, the opposite of that effect. Whereas you clean up as much as you can, you actually find the calm in all aspects. You have your full range of emotions, but you have, as the Force people would say, analam, or the calm. That's their word for calm, loosely translated. And you enter that state, whereas, yes, you see the storm on the horizon, but do you panic at the sight of it, or do you weather it? This is key right now. Grounding is the other key. You must remain grounded at all times to the earth, no matter what shakes your feet loose from the soil, you see. Keep regrounding constantly. Make sure you have not only the people around you that serve you best, but the energies around you that serve you best. And I don't mean in an egocentric way. I mean, he calls it the splitting of the densities. If somebody is becoming too frequency separated from them, that usually means spirit is trying to say different timeline, different purpose, or different train that you're on. Let's say job 2, Circumstantial too. You will start to see when you start to alter these energies, it expands into the timeline that is necessary for you at the moment. Now, let's say if you were manifesting a list of things you want to happen, like you said, predictions, things of that nature, but to be more accurate, it's manifesting. And you want to see yourself on the timeline, say where you didn't need your work, you wanted to go full time into this. That has to be reaffirmed as a timeline that your frequency is being allowed to go to, not to inhibit by saying, oh, this is how it's always going to be. The universe or the multiverse will see that and create, or you would say God or a true benevolent source creator would see, oh, Aubrey or Chris want to experience more of this particular timeline because they're saying, oh, this is how it's always going to be. It's in your wording, spelling, you say, incantation, that kind of thing. The magic is there. It's the intention you're putting into it. That is biggie. That's another thing. The intent by which you are entering the vocation and or thing that you want to do and or that you are doing. There is no distinction universally between what you are doing and what you want to do, you see. So you have to make it clear that is the path that you yourself wish.
Hmm. Well, with there only being, I guess, 20 some days, I guess 20 days left, 21 days left at the end of this year. Less than 3 weeks, or I guess 3 weeks right now, yeah. What's some things that people can do to prep themselves to be better in 2025 right now? What's some words of advice that you can give people these final 3 weeks?
Do not, I repeat, do not get sucked into, let's say, the narratives that spew out of your television. I mean, this goes in all sides, in all angles. And you were saying the whole thing with the predictions for Kamala winning or Trump winning or any of these things. There's not, as he would say, there's not really winning or losing in this respect. It's narrative, but there's also the timelines to consider. Aside from all of the crap spewing out of the television, find time to look at things you enjoy versus getting sucked into a someone else's path or someone else's narrative that then you self-identify with. People did that with QAnon. He always said, some people would say, oh, I'm an Anon, meaning what they really meant is they wanted a more peaceful world, but they were aligning with a particular cause they knew nothing about. It was a narrative, you see. Be mindful of narratives. Don't get sucked into a cause you know nothing about. And then make sure that you take a step back and look at it objectively. That, if I could advise anybody on the coming year, that would be that.
That's pretty good. Well, thank you much. That's basically what I want to leave people with today. And if you have anything else that you'd like to close out with, that's all I got today.
Yeah, I always enjoy these particular shows. Where both of you, you'll start to see that momentum pick up just a little bit in this area. Don't always think that you're stuck in a position that you're in, like with you, Aubrey, and your work situation, and that's generalized for anybody listening. The same with his, with a stagnation pattern. If you start to walk the path like that's never going to end, it's never going to end. So if you walk the path as if something is already occurring that you want to happen, therefore that is the timeline you end up on. So if I could leave with that, I will leave with that. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Ooh, got my eye running there. But yeah, that's correct. Where the different vibration that you're on happens to be like the key lock that opens up that being you walking on that timeline, and you have to have the intention of that the thing that you're doing is already occurring. And like when I channel the forest people, I see them doing this motion with their hands. They're telling me walk the path. That's when I see this. So and I saw that in my head as I was going. So they knew I would know what that meant. So but yeah, with the timelines, it's tricky that way, but it always is being in the moment. Is essentially what it is. So Aubrey, I don't know if you have anything else before we take it out today.
That's pretty much it, I guess. We hope everybody has a good Christmas season, and hopefully our future is brighter more than dim. But I guess try to survive everything that comes our way, baby, and your.
Exactly. So thank everybody for watching this. You are now leaving the conspiracy sector. Hope you enjoyed this, folks. Bye-bye.
Yep, and we'll see you next year.
Bye.